Why do you think these countries that once championed the globalization, like the United States and India and even China?
Recently, we have seen that we have been slapped with a 100% tariff on our branded pharmaceutical products.
China then retaliated by imposing tariffs on the agricultural products of India, and which actually hurted the agriculture sector of America.
The global trade is shrinking. It might seem to be a setback for India.
The formulation of policies is not just about economics, but it is also about strategy, diplomacy, and the self-reliance of a country.
We have all seen the prices of phones and clothes and even groceries lately. They're rising.
Try to become the Vishwaguru, as we want to become the Vishwaguru. One of them is being the manufacturing hub of the world, the pharmaceutical manufacturing hub of the world. We still need certain components of the medicines has to be imported from other countries, like for example China.
What to trade and who to trade with is the motto for today's trade, for the trade conditions today.
Because of this, somehow it led to the spread of depression faster than a Wi-Fi.
There is a need for selective protectionism with globalization. That it seems like patriotism unless and until you have seen your shopping bills.
India has also put a ban on certain applications of China like PUBG, WeChat, ShareIt, TikTok, etc.
I think that India is standing at a crossroads where we don't have to retreat, rather we have to reinvent.
In India, for every Adidas, we have an Abhilash.
From rising tariffs to self-reliant economies, trade has suddenly become everybody's favorite headline, especially US President Donald Trump's. So hello everyone, I welcome you all to the second episode of NextGenTalks, where we have meaningful conversations with the voices of NEXT IAS on the issues that matter today and that will shape the world of tomorrow. Every topic is a contemporary issue and we discuss multiple dimensions of it. Today's topic is free trade to protectionism and what it means for India. So let's quickly understand what we are talking about. Free trade is when countries buy and sell goods and services to each other without heavy taxes or restrictions. It helps products move easily across borders, which usually means cheaper goods, more choices, and better opportunities for everyone. On the other hand, protectionism is when a country puts rules, taxes, or limits on imports to protect its own businesses or national interests. While this can help local companies grow, it can also make products more expensive and less available. Now, why is it important for us in India? Well, India is a growing economy that trades with a lot of other countries. Decisions in global trade affects prices of medicines, electronics, food, and everyday things that we purchase. This is a highly relevant topic for examination perspective as well as for our daily lives, as it affects our wallets, job opportunities, and the availability of essential products. So let's quickly start the discussion. With us today, we have the students of our GS Foundation batch. Firstly, we have Amir Ranjan with us. Then we have Khushi, then we have Vaidehi, and lastly we have Danish Nisar. So, my first question will be to Vaidehi. Vaidehi, in the recent years, we have seen a global shift from open trade to economic self-reliance. And why do you think these countries that once championed the globalization, like the United States and India and even China, are now prioritizing protectionist measures?
So after World War II, the global consensus decided to shift towards free and open trade. It was the point of time when almost all of the major economies of the world were hit by financial crisis as a result of the war. So the countries wanted to formulate policies that would not only help in their faster growth, rather would also promote peace and prosperity in the world to prevent such wars from happening in the future. So this led to the establishment of institutions like GATT in 1945 and the World Trade Organization in 1995, of which India was a founding member. But these institutions ultimately led to globalization, but soon globalization started showing its cracks when the countries realized that the benefits of globalization were not experienced by the countries equally. While some countries were growing richer and richer, and on the other hand, other countries were still struggling to maintain their place in the global supply chains. And to compound to the problem came events like 2008 global depression and the recent COVID-19 pandemic. All these events together led to the massive disruptions in the global supply chains. So this compelled the countries to rethink whether the globalization has a positive effect or whether the free trade is actually free. They started to think that being self-reliant isn't that of a bad idea. So also, ma'am, one of the major reasons why I feel that there was a shift from free and open trade to strategic protectionism was because of the rising global tensions and the tariff wars that are seen in the world today. Along with this, I feel that countries are not 100% moving away from free trade, because today we also see a number of free trade agreements being signed by India as well as other countries. So we can conclude that countries are not completely moving away from free trade, but they are engaging into measures of protectionism, and because they're just putting more locks to their doors than they were previously.
Right, and what you're trying to say is that they are finding a middle way out, not exactly moving towards protectionism while not being exactly in free trade. And I think protectionism isn't always bad. Sometimes it also boosts local innovation. So now my next question will be to Khushi. Can you think of industries where trade barriers actually helped domestic growth, like clean energy or tech manufacturing?
Yes, ma'am. So basically, these protectionist policies which are imposed on the foreign products are to safeguard the domestic industries. So the first and the foremost point is that to safeguard the infant, nascent and the domestic industries. There are some industries which are like quite infant, just came in the market, so they are not open for the foreign competition and need some safeguard from the national, the government and from the foreign products. So basically it happened in the India as well. In 1980s, India imposed like large amount of custom duties and the tariffs on the foreign products to safeguard the domestic industries, the domestic agriculture as well. Second point can be the national security. So basically after the COVID-19, so world has seen the vulnerabilities in the COVID-19, and according to the WTO, during the 2020, the world trade decreased by 5%. So the countries were not importing the things to each other, were not exporting the things to each other. So basically it led to the vulnerabilities, and people thought that they have to shift towards localizing their industries and to have to work towards their domestic industries. And for the purpose of the national security as well, as in the sector of energy and the critical minerals as well, there is a need to localize them, because if there is a diplomatic tensions between them, any countries, and the trade tensions between any countries, or the war between any countries, so the countries will stop the import or export of that particular product. And what is the alternative of that? They have to localize it. So countries started working towards that. Even in India, we have like the PLI schemes, that is production linked incentive, and the Atmanirbhar Bharat as well, to safeguard our industries. Then people believe that the cost will shift to the consumers, but actually in the long term it will help the industries and the people as well, as it will increase the jobs. The local jobs will be increased as the people will shift from international products to the domestic products. The jobs will increase alternatively. Secondly is that the clean energy ecosystem will be developed. The local innovation will be there. People believe that it will hinder the technological transfer from the foreign countries, but the domestic innovation will be increased, especially in case of critical minerals. China recently stopped the export of it to the India. So what was the alternative for India? Nothing. Then we started like towards localizing it and a search for some alternatives. So like I think that protectionism can be beneficial for some industries like energy and the critical minerals.
Absolutely, Khushi. And there's one point that you mentioned, COVID-19. Yes, I completely agree with that. Post-COVID, actually COVID came as a shocker for many countries. So, post-COVID, people did not understand that, they did not anticipate that global markets will shift or disrupt in such a manner. Especially in India also, PPE kits were not available, a lot of medicines were not available. So I think that was an acceleration to movements like initiatives like Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat. So my next question will be to Danish. Do you think initiatives like Atmanirbhar Bharat and Make in India have truly made India more competitive in this protectionist world?
Ma'am, while answering this, we have to first of all realize that we are certainly living in the times when this protectionism is gradually becoming a new normal. And apart from that, these trade wars and tariff wars, they are changing the global trade dynamics. So in such changing dynamics, India is located at a point where we have to strengthen ourselves. And for that, there are various initiatives like we have Atmanirbhar Bharat, like we have Make in India, that calls for the self-reliance and resilience, and thereby trying to make India and all of its citizens self-reliant. Now here, we have to understand one thing. When we are talking about self-reliance, it does not mean that we are being exclusionary in nature, nor it means that we are being isolationist in nature. It simply means that since this is a new India, so we have to understand that we are trying to build that capacity. We are trying to build that internal strength that is required to deal with the world with equal terms. So if I talk about initiatives like Atmanirbhar Bharat, so Atmanirbhar Bharat, it's first of all, we have to understand it's a vision of new India. And it concentrates mainly on reducing import dependence across various sectors, such as defense is there, auto components are there, and various other sectors. And it also promotes indigenous manufacturing. And for that, we have a scheme, as my friend mentioned, PLI, that is production linked incentive, which basically incentivizes the companies that are manufacturing in India across various sectors, like pharmaceuticals, like other sectors are there. So the intent behind this scheme is that we want our Indian companies to have manufacturing bases in India only. Rather than being dependent on other foreign countries, we want them to have manufacturing facilities in India. And that will eventually lead India towards becoming the second or next global manufacturing hub. And similarly, if we are talking about Make in India, this Make in India initiative, it was basically launched on 25th of September 2014. And under this initiative, it basically aims to transfer India into a global innovation and manufacturing hub. And under this motto, vocal for local, which our Honorable Prime Minister has been recently emphasizing about, that we need to appreciate our locally manufacturing industries and goods. So to conclude this, I would say that world is shifting towards protectionism. India's approach of mixing both self-reliance and global integration, it is going to help us to sail through in such economic times.
Yes, absolutely, Danish. And today we see many countries raising tariffs and adding import restrictions from, as you mentioned, electronics to EVs. So my next question will be to Amya. How do such moves affect ordinary customers as well as local businesses?
Thank you, ma'am. Now, here I would like to explain it with an example where we can see the exporter point of view and we can see the importer point of view. Let's say India. India is the exporting country and let's say US is the importing country. Now, recently we have seen that we have been slapped with a 100% tariff on our branded pharmaceutical products on India. That means any product that is supposed to cost rupees 100 or let's say $100 in the global market. Now, when it is being exported to US, it would be costing $200 there because of the 100% tariff that has been imposed here. Now, at this point of time, it becomes detrimental to the exporters, that is for India, because now it is losing the competitiveness in the market for any product in the importing country right now. But let's say, for example, we are considering a consumer there. The consumer will always be having two options here right now to choose between a product or the same product which is coming from India at $200 or let's say it's coming from some other country at $120. Now it's on the perspective of the consumer right now. If he thinks or he or she thinks that the quality of the product that is coming from India and the quality of the product that is coming from any country, let's say X, is the same, then he might be wanting to choose a $120 product rather than a $200 product. This keeps the exporter in India at a loss here because now they won't be able to sell their products in the market right now. But as the topic of COVID-19 has been taken up here, let me also include this in my discussion here. For example, we have been trying to become the pharmaceutical hub of the world right now, correct? And at the time of pandemic, we were the ones who tried to prove it to the world as well that we are capable of producing indigenous vaccines, which we did also in the by the name of Covaxin and Covishield. Now, we were also transporting it. We were also exporting it to different countries now at very less rates here. Now, if this was made available to USA at that point of time and had USA given this much tariff at that point of time, who would be at the receiving end of the brunt of this point here? The customer, because right now the consumer won't be having any other choice right now because there was no other country who was producing or manufacturing these vaccines, which was required, a dire requirement at that point of time. It is only India who is able to produce. Now, what we can do at this point of time, we have to give it to them, we have to export it to their country, but because of the tariffs that have been imposed onto us, it has still cost them too much. The consumer at the lower end of the community would be facing the brunt of it, won't be able to afford it, and probably won't be able to save their life as well. So here we can see two things here. It is always based on the perspective. It is always based on the case-to-case products here. Sometimes the exporter is at loss, and sometimes, or majority of the times, we can see the consumer at the lower level is at the loss. Here.
Absolutely, Ame. And we have all seen the prices of phones and clothes and even groceries lately. They're rising. So Khushi, do you think the global trade restrictions and tariff wars are partially to be blamed?
No, ma'am. I actually believe that the recent protectionist policies and the tariffs that has been imposed, especially like by the America on the different countries, like almost all the countries. So these are this is a major reason. Some other reason can also be there, but I believe this is a major reason. And to substantiate my viewpoint, I have some points. First and foremost is that these imported, like whatever is the tariff that has been imposed on the imported goods will increase the price of the good. That has to be paid by the consumer. It will lead to the inflation in the country as well. It will change the budget policy as well, the particular consumer. Then it will decrease the quality of living and increase the cost of living of the people. Basically, if there are trade tensions between the countries, for example, we have seen it between the America and the China, when America imposed tariffs on the China, on the electronics, machinery and everything. And China then retaliated by imposing tariffs on the agricultural products of India, and which actually hurted the agriculture sector of America. So basically, the next point we can be disruption in the supply chain. The businessman, there is uncertainty in the market. The businesses have to reshuffle the things and they reshuffle the supply chain. And if they are diverting their trade, so maybe from if they are importing something from the China, they will divert it to the Vietnam or the Mexico. It will increase the transportation cost for the businesses as well, which will be shifted to consumer only. And the choices for the consumer will also decrease in a way that now if the imported goods are quite expensive, now they have to see towards the domestic products, and maybe they are not getting the similar quality in the domestic products. And if I take the example of 2018 American tariffs. So during the Donald Trump administration, in his first term in 2018, he imposed the tariffs of 25% on the steel and 10% on aluminium, which impacted the automobile sector as well, electronic sector as well. Then he charged the sector like electronics and the machinery in the China case. So these sectors will impact the consumers. As recently in India as well, the textile sector was asking government to avoid any type of anti-dumping duties on the MEG, that is very important chemical in the textile sector, because it will increase the final product cost. The investment will also decrease, FDI flow will also decrease. So they basically don't want to safeguard them. They just want the final product the cost of the final product that should be reduced. So basically it will impact in the groceries as well. In the clothing sector as well, as US is importing much of its clothing sector from Bangladesh. So it will imposing 20% tariff, it will become 100 to 120. It will impact the consumers only. In the pharmaceutical sector as well, in the pharma, we have seen that in the generic medicines, the profit margin is quite low. And if we are if the APIs, for example, if India imposed any type of tariffs on the APIs coming from China, the price will increase for the consumers. And according to the Bank of America report, if the prices of all the vehicles, like the cost and everything, is shifted to the consumers, it will cost $1,000 extra to the consumers per vehicle. So in this way, I believe that it will impact. There can be other the cases as well of increasing the cost, but tariffs at this present stage is a major cause of increasing the cost of these.
Right, absolutely. And as you've mentioned, many global disruptions like the tariff war, I would also like to add Russia-Ukraine war to that, and also pandemic, COVID-19. So my next question will be to Vaidehi. Vaidehi, how do these global disruptions push governments to safeguard their domestic industries instead of depending on the global trade?
So ma'am, these global disruptions that are happening, they heavily push the government to move towards adopting more protectionist measures, in my opinion. And one of the major reasons for that is during such global disruptions, the supply and the demand between the countries, it reduces drastically. And because of this, what happens is that the governments move towards protecting their own domestic industries. And so they would not only do this to maintain financial stability, but would also do this to prevent job losses in their respective countries. And history has proven that whenever there has been a global disruption, maybe the Russia-Ukraine war or the COVID-19 pandemic, the countries have instinctively moved inwards, and rather than looking at a global scenario, they are focusing more on on development of their domestic industries. So a classic example of this could be the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act 1930, as imposed by United States of America during the times of global depression. So by this act, the United States of America increased the tariffs on certain agricultural and manufacturing sectors of the other imports of the other countries to promote their farmers and the manufacturers. But because of this, somehow it led to the spread of depression faster than a Wi-Fi. But ultimately, this shows us how United States of America instinctively moved inwards towards protecting its own supply chains and building its own sustainable supply chains in such an adverse situation. And similar turn of events have also been seen during the 2008 global depression as well as during the COVID-19 pandemic. And when we talk about India, the Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative, as initiated by India, so this was also a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, where India believed that not only that depending heavily on global supply chains would not be a correct idea, where they should also focus on developing our own domestic industries, so that our industries become such self-reliant and such strong enough to compete safely in the global market. So I feel that whenever these adverse conditions occur, they make countries believe more in their potential rather than just depending on the supply chains. Along with this, I would like to add on that not only these disruptions, but also the geopolitical tensions that happen because of this, because of the recent trend we've seen that countries are not importing certain vital goods from the other countries. For example, semiconductors that we see today, the rare earth metals, the electricity, or maybe some strategic technological instruments. They're not importing these from the rival countries, and along with this, they're also banning certain applications from the other countries just to protect their data and their infrastructure. So I feel these are all the conditions that have shaped the protectionist tendencies of the countries.
Absolutely, very nicely put, Vaidehi. And as we've talked about what India is currently doing, I would also like to explore on what opportunities can India explore if other countries close their markets. Danish, this question is to you.
Ma'am, in such circumstances where we see that the global trade is shrinking, it might seem to be a setback for India. But at the very same time, we can explore various options that we have in our hand. If I talk about various options, first of all, we can strengthen our domestic market. That is very much important, and there, it can be simply done by promoting various initiatives. As I was talking about earlier, I was talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat or Make in India, or we can also go for ease of doing business, where we can, simplify our provisions, and where we can do other things so that the government interface and the business, so the government and business interface, it becomes easy, because businesses ultimately play a very important role in an economy. And second important thing that we can do is we can tap new markets. According to economic survey, we have been from 1994 to 2022, we have not only explored new markets, but we have become global leaders in such markets. Like we hold a 33% of share in the shipping vessels export. And when FTAs, they play a very important role. And we have seen a decisive pivot where India is shifting from multilateralism to bilateral free trade agreements. But that's a different story why it is happening. But if we talk about the economic benefits of FTA, it gives us market access. And apart from that, it boosts our exports, and it can, to a certain extent, it can strengthen our domestic industries as well. And ma'am, the most important opportunity that we can take leverage from right now is China plus one opportunity, China plus one strategy. And since the companies, they had manufacturing bases back in China, but due to various factors, they are shifting and they are diversifying their manufacturing bases. Now India can position itself as a viable option for to invite such companies and allow them to manufacture within India. And these are some of the options that we can explore if the global trade would shrink, or if other countries would close borders on us. So depending on India's credibility and demographic dividend and policy reforms, we still have a room to improve in terms of economics.
Right, absolutely. We always have room to improve. But as you were talking about domestic strengthening of businesses, strengthening our domestic businesses, my next question will be to Amya. Amya, can you think of examples where governments clearly pushed people to buy local? And did it really help the economy, or did it limit the global choices?
Ma'am, thank you for this. I would like to state that yes, there are examples where people or the government has pushed people to buy for local. Now, as Danish included the examples of Atmanirbhar Bharat, the Make in India incentive, Make in India policy, and the PLI, the production link incentive techniques. Here, in there, many of the cases where they're including the textile industry, sometimes the pharmaceutical industry, where it has been promoted that the government tried to incentivize the companies to manufacture it locally, and for the Indians also to buy it from the local. The thing was, it so happened that if you try to become the Vishwaguru, as we want to become the Vishwaguru, one of them is being the manufacturing hub of the world, the pharmaceutical manufacturing hub of the world. We still need certain components of the medicines has to be imported from other countries, like for example China. Correct. Now, in that case, if the relation between us and China is amicable, it is good for us. The import happens and we are able to manufacture the products. But let's say, for example, the conditions tomorrow are not good, then this logistics, this import, this gets affected. This global supply chain gets affected, and then we are unable to produce the manufactured goods. So now the government was focused towards producing everything inside the country itself, so that the supply chain is not getting disrupted. The APIs, active pharmaceutical components, that is required for the production of the medicines, or let's say the semiconductors that is required, or the rare earth metals that is required, everything coming from the China, this is also can be taken from inside the India, or can be produced, or their substitutes can be produced inside India, so that they can be utilized to manufacture the finished goods, the products that can be utilized to can be marketed outside, and we can become self-dependent in that.
Right, and as we're talking about a lot about local productions being self-dependent, make in India, I would like to ask Danish again, when India pushes for local production and import substitution, how does it change what we buy and how much we pay?
Ma'am, in such times when we are talking about protectionist world, when as she rightly mentioned that when countries are closing their doors, these does affect the prices that we pay, or the products that we buy, and the product variety available in the market. Let me illustrate it with certain examples. If there are certain products that are not available in the Indian market, it is due to when we impose imports on imported goods, then there will be certain products that will not be present in the Indian market. And apart from that, due to the trade substitution, there will be less product variety in the India that will be available to the domestic consumers and in the domestic market. And ma'am, but at the very same time, it has flip side to it that I'll discuss later, but it has a flip side to it. First of all, if I give certain examples, like as my friend mentioned, that if we impose tariffs on electronic sector, then the imported smartphones that are coming to India, they'll be cheaper. Sorry, they'll be costlier, and their prices tend to rise. And if we talk about various other sectors, if we talk about various other brands, if we are focusing on import substitution, then most of the brands or tech companies, they would not have the chance to grow in India, and eventually our Indian customers, they would miss out on various features, they would miss out on various brands. So this can be result, or this can be the effect of imposing tariffs on the imposed goods. But if we talk about the flip side, or if we talk about the opportunities that we can get, we can strengthen our domestic industries. We can empower our MSMEs. As if we talk about MSMEs, they play a very important role in our economics, since they are one of the largest employment generators, especially for the women. So these are the kind of effects that we can see if these tariffs are being imposed. And apart from that, if we talk about India, then we have to make it sure that we have to balance this protectionism. We have to balance this imposition of tariffs, because we do not want our competitiveness, or we do not want our stability or growth to get affected by it. So ultimately, we have to take a nuanced approach where we have to strengthen ourselves and try to strike a balance between protectionism and global integration to have a suitable outcome.
Right, absolutely. And beyond tariffs, what subtle tools do government now use to protect their markets? And is WTO still relevant in today's time? That's a question for you, Amya.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Now, apart from tariffs, there are other non-tariff barriers also that a country can impose to the imports that are coming into the country. For example, putting a quota onto the imports, that this particular amount of quantity or this particular quantity of the product only can be imported into the country, not more than that. Other than that, licensing can also be introduced, that if this product is supposed to be coming into our country, then it has to be licensed, or the manufacturer of this country must have been licensed by the WTO or any of the international organization which is capable of doing this licensing and all. Other than that, sanitary and phytosanitary measures can also be imposed, that whether these were prepared in a proper conditions that is required for the that is of importance to our country. Let's say, for example, the milk products. Currently, the milk products are not being imported from USA because it is alleged that they feed their cattle with the blood meal, which is something that is not expected or that is not acceptable to people in our country. That is why this kind of a non-tariff barrier has been imposed onto them. Other than that, dumping against dumping, the anti-dumping duties also has been imposed. What is dumping is where the country may put their products into our market at lower than the market prices also, just to capture the market. Now, to prevent this, anti-dumping duties has been imposed on a country like China, who is very good at manufacturing electronic products and certain other products at a very lower cost, and which may affect our domestic markets as well. There could be other methods also, which time to time the government may come up with, which may not be tariff barriers, but maybe non-tariff barriers which can be imposed onto that one. Now, with respect to this, we can see that the WTO, which the discussion began in the beginning itself, and whether he began with the fact that WTO, India has been a member of WTO since the very beginning, since its inception in 1995. Now, WTO is all about maintaining free trades between different countries, but it is relevant in this context. It is still relevant as a international body, but its effectiveness is being questioned under here, because right now countries are not vying for the free trade agreements. Rather than that, they are going for more protectionist measures. Now, this may not be entirely free trade, or it may not be entirely protectionist, but somewhere in between, tending towards protectionist, because they do not prefer multilateral projects. They do not prefer. They are going mostly for the bilateral trades. They are going mostly for the regional trades. They do not try to venture into faraway lands and all. So these kind of matters make us question on the effectiveness of the WTO in how is it going to make sure that, or how is it going to make sure that the free trades are being allowed and not protectionism. So mostly the WTO is still relevant, but its effective is still questionable.
Right, absolutely. Now let's talk about global trade tensions like the US-China tech war or the Red Sea shipping disruptions. Don't just affect big corporations. How do you think these issues might shape future job markets on your own career choices? This is a question for you, Khushi.
Yes, ma'am. So people actually believe that all these trade tensions and the tariff war basically impact the businesses or the MNCs only, but it actually affect the career of the students as well, jobs as well. Talking about the student career and taking the example of US and China, as you have mentioned about the US and China trade war. So basically it happened that there was a visa processing delays in the case of Chinese students. Even the Donald Trump in his first term, and even in like 2020, he brought in, and the Biden also take it with him, like in his administration also, that Chinese students were banned from the STEM career options like science, tech, engineering and the maths. They believe that they can be like harmful for the national security if they have any type of relation with the Chinese government or the military, which they don't have any evidence of that as well. So basically it affected the visas as well, visas cancellation for the Chinese students. Secondly, we have seen that due to all these tariffs and everything, the cost of living has increased, and it is for the students as well. Thirdly, the immigration policies, there are restrictions on the immigration policies like the H-1B visa restriction that we have recently seen. It is not just for the India, but it is the 70% of the Indian students that are going to America under this H-1B visa scheme, and the 12 to 13% of the Chinese students as well. Fourthly, discrimination among the students. If there are trade wars, diplomatic tensions among the countries, there will be discrimination for sure. and many a times we have seen the example of the discrimination against the Asian students, whether it's Chinese or the Indian. And not just the students, it will also impact the America. The housing market of the America will be impacted from this, as the overseas students are going, around 8% of the American housing market is due to the overseas students. Then the American universities and the senior colleges will be impacted due to this. Now talking about the jobs, so there will be shifting in the jobs due to all these. The investment will be hindered or due to the trade tensions between the countries, and the job cutting will be there. As economy, for the economy, the main driving tool is the certainty and stability. If there is uncertainty among the countries, the jobs will shift from one sector to the another. They will divert from one country to the another. There will be force-shoring, like to have the trade relations, like have the businesses with the geopolitically or the geographically near countries. So the jobs will shift also, and the jobs will decrease as well in the country as well that has imposed the protectionist policies. As according to one report, due to all these tariff tensions in America itself, 5 million agricultural jobs were decreased. And so also, like talking about the Red Sea crisis as well. So in the Red Sea crisis, the complete supply chains, they have to divert the route and everything due to the all such uncertainty, and it will impact the jobs of the port, like the major, like the person who are working at the ground level at the ports and everything. And it can divert the jobs, like the MNCs would focus more on outsourcing and everything, like to divert their sourcing and everything. So the major thing of the jobs, like the data logistics and all such jobs will increase. The diversion in the jobs can also be seen.
Right, absolutely. And as you've mentioned, Khushi, H1B visa hike, fee hike, data privacy also. A lot of countries are banning apps due to data privacy issues. Not only that, technology sharing is a big issue these days. A lot of countries do not share their technology and technological dependence. So all these concerns, how are these reshaping the trade policies today?
So ma'am, all of these concerns today, they play a pivotal role in reshaping the country's trade policies. Especially, as she mentioned, national security today is a very important issue, because of which, on whose consideration the trade policies are being formulated today. And this wasn't happening in the past, but these days, due to growing maybe more awareness and because of more technological advancements, the policy decisions are made while considering the national security and national interests first. So, for example, today the United States of America has imposed restrictions on certain technological and pharmaceutical products of China. For example, the Hawaii Enterprises and the INSPA groups. Similarly, India has also put a ban on certain applications of China like PUBG, WeChat, ShareIt, TikTok, etc. And the major reason why India and United States of America has done it, and they've mentioned about the national security or data breach, and also about the infrastructural breach that is happening. So in my opinion, today the formulation of policies is not just about economics, but it is also about strategy, diplomacy, and self-reliance of a country, because it is the trade policy which is navigating, and which actually navigates towards the domestic industries and the domestic markets, and which actually provides a place to the country in the global supply chains. And along with this, today the recent trend we've observed that countries are limiting the foreign investments in certain sectors like semiconductors, as I mentioned, energy, AI today, because they say that these are sensitive sectors in which they would not want foreign investments, and they do not want other country to have a say in their country's development in that sense. Also, I've observed that countries are banning certain applications and pharmaceutical products of other countries. Along with this, they're also not exporting their technological advancements to their rival countries, something which wasn't happening priorly. So countries are today very intelligently trying not only, and that is when it comes right, that it's not only about free trade today, it's also about who to trade and what to trade with which country, which is playing an important role today. So in my opinion, today policy decisions are formulated keeping in mind the national security. Also, it's not just about the prices and the profits, which it used to be earlier. Today, it's also about power. Today, it's also about the national position in this global world. And so I believe that a good trade policy would be the one which is somehow navigated intelligently between economics and sovereignty of a country.
Absolutely, very nicely put, Vedahi. And as you've already mentioned, what to trade and who to trade with is the motto for the trade conditions today. So I think we have already summed up a lot of dimensions of this topic. We have talked about historical evolution, we have talked about tools of protectionism, then we have talked about the global impacts, and lastly, we've also talked about the policy and implementations of India. Now let's talk about the way forward. What do you think is the way forward for this? And should we find a middle way out, or we should move back like we have been doing it, free trade, or completely protectionism is required? So let's start with the way forward. We'll start with Amir.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We cannot completely go for free trade here, or we cannot go for protectionism here, because every aspect has its own pros and it has its own cons. If you look at the free trade, now free trade may be taking the spaces of Indian companies. Let's say, like Khushi was discussing about the sunset companies, or probably the infant companies, the infant industries which are not able to cope up with the market policies, with the established one in the foreign markets. Now, if we are allowing free trade here, then the foreign companies are going to capture the market here, and our Indian indigenous companies are never going to bloom here. But if you take for protectionism as well, protectionism is probably going to, or it may also have the ability to promote inefficient companies as such. What will happen is, in the absence of any sort of competition from any other industry, they may go towards monopolistic capabilities, forcing what the customer requires or what is in the benefit of the customers, and they would be only maintaining their profitability, their profit margin in the market here. So as we can see, both free trade and protectionism will have their own pros and cons, even for the own country which is applying to it. Pros and cons, and for pros and cons in the case of protectionism also. We cannot go for entirely the free trade, or we cannot go for entirely the protectionism. Somewhere we have to find a middle space in between, and it cannot be exactly also in the middle. It has to be completely case-wise. Like I was discussing in the beginning about the pharmaceutical components, like I said in the beginning about the exporters and the consumers, it also has to be taken case-to-case basis. Here also, in the case-to-case basis, we have to decide whether we have to allow free trade or we have to allow the protectionism. It cannot be also completely in between, or at the 50% of free trade and the protectionism as well.
Right. Khushi.
Yes, ma'am. So I actually agree with him. There is a need for selective protectionism with globalization, because heavy protectionism is something which is actually said as well, that it seems like patriotism unless and until you have seen your shopping bills. So basically, heavy protectionism can impact the people, like both the importing country and the exporting country. And like we also can follow this notion that there is, like, we can't depend on one country for the to export it. Like we are dependent on the USA for all our exports, and we are dependent on for all our imports on the China. So we should focus on this thing, that we should not be dependent on one country for the export and one country on the import. There is a need for selective protectionism in few sectors like agriculture. India is not operating its sector because we are not in that same stage, like the genetically modified crops. We don't have like that much sector. So there is a need for like fair trade between the countries. So there is a need for this balance between both the things.
All right. Danish.
Yes, ma'am. So, ma'am, in such uncertain economic times where we are seeing that countries are growing inwards, and these trade wars and tariff wars, how they are reshaping the global trade dynamics. So I think that India is standing at a crossroads where we don't have to retreat, rather we have to reinvent. And that simply means that if we can use this protectionism, and if we can take this in a good sense, it can act as a bridge, safeguarding our national interest and giving access to the global market. And apart from that, it also comes with opportunities. Like we can strengthen, as I earlier mentioned, we can strengthen our MSMEs, or we can strengthen our domestic industries. So in an essence, I would say that we are not, we don't have to, step back. Rather, we have to move forward. And that means that we still have to negotiate, we still have to integrate, and we still have to involved in these trade activities, but not from the position of dependence, but rather from the position of strength. So that is something which is going to help India to sail through and navigate in such protectionist times.
Right. Yes, Vaidehi.
Yes, ma'am. So the way forward in this context would include drawing a pragmatic and a balanced approach between the two extremes, that is free trade and protectionism. While on one hand, free trade would promote innovation, efficiency and consumer benefits, and on the other hand, protectionism would ensure national security and job promotions in our country. While I feel that today we need smart policies that would not only help us in opening our domestic industries to the world market so that we can have a healthy competition and understand our position, that where do we stand in the world market, while on the other hand we also need certain policies that would protect our certain sectors and certain vital sectors like national security, food security, which would help in the long-term resilience. So in the end, I would like to say that I agree with my friend Amya that in India, for every Adidas we have an Abhilash, and it is very important to understand that just for the promotion of our indigenous goods, we should not compromise with quality. So either we should make goods which are equal in quality like that of an Adidas, or else the only option which is left is promoting Adidas in our country.
Very nicely put, Vaidehi. And to conclude, I would like to add, India's path from free trade to protectionism is all about balance, opening up for growth while protecting key sectors. The goal is to combine both for sustainable and self-reliant progress. And that is it for today. Thank you so much everyone for being here with me, and thank you so much the viewers for being here with us and watching our video. If you want us to take up any other topic in other discussions, please comment it down, and thank you so much for watching NextGenTalks. I will see you in another episode. Thank you so much.